Thank you. I am back to work next week, so I'm going to have limited time to continue my study of Hindi, but I am going to be trying to do it every single day. I was trying to do it for a while, an hour every day. That kind of just got to be a drag, so 30 minutes every day I was trying for a while, and now I simply do it. I repeat all the phrases every single day. The repetition is very important, but I'm not spending tons and tons of time on this. I kind of make my way through them quickly, and as my vocabulary and my phrases build, of course it'll take a little bit more time, but I feel it'll be not so much of a burden as learning from scratch. Just a little bit of information about language this week. All of your language processing happens on the left side of your brain. Broca's area is in the front, and it is responsible for the movement of the teeth, tongue, and lips. Movement allows you to speak. This is the output of information, which, as I've been saying, is very important for learning. Creating the information, making your body engage with the information, making your mouth speak the words. This is important for learning. But of course, you have to also have the processing center where you take it in the first place. That is the purview of Wernicke's area, which is in the back, towards the back of the cerebrum, back here. And that is where you hear words and you try to make out different words from different languages and so on. Now, in almost everybody, the language centers are on the left-hand side. Broca's area in the front, Wernicke's area in the back. They are on the left side of your cerebral cortex. But in very, very rare cases, for example, developmental abnormalities or something happening during the developmental process, you might end up having your language centers on the right. For example, a few years ago, there was a little girl. She was 3 years old. I believe she was experiencing very serious seizures, and it was to the point where they had to have a surgery to correct the problem. And she was young enough that they were confident that she would restore a lot of her functions. She had a hemispherectomy where they removed one hemisphere of her brain. They removed the left half, where the language centers are. Now, of course, at 3 years old, she was already speaking and understanding words, so she did have some development of Broca's and Wernicke's area. So after the surgery, she stopped speaking, and they weren't certain that she would restore speech, but they were confident, like they were hopeful that she would come back, that her speech would come back, and indeed it did. It took about a year, as I recall, for her speech to come back, and then it developed on the right side of the brain. She developed a Broca's area and a Wernicke's area on the right side of her brain. Pretty cool. Well, Hindi continues to be a pleasure to speak, but there are subtle differences in the way that I am speaking, and I think the correct way to pronounce things, and I'm starting to pick up on some of those. So, for example, in the narrative today, during which I have a guest star, my son is going to be helping me out with this one. It is an interaction also taken from a Carl Rock video where he goes to a market and he purchases some bananas. And so we're going to be doing that transaction. I will be the customer and my son Carter is going to be the vendor, and I'm going to buy some bananas from him. One of the cool things in this video is that after this transaction, he really goes through every single term in the transaction and what every single thing means and why it was said and so on, which I think is really neat. And then afterwards, he goes back to his house and he's sitting with a friend of his who's a native Hindi speaker. And this native Hindi speaker talks about the pronunciation of things like heh. Now, H-A-I-N, heh, is a word that I have sort of been saying the French way, heh, heh. There's more nasal to this than I'm doing. I think that heh, heh, heh. So, for example, aap kaise hain? Aap kaise hain? There was a phrase that we learned in last week's video, which was nahi chahi hai, nahi chahi hai, nahi chahiye. That nahi. The native Hindi speaker says this without even really thinking about it. Nahi. For me, it takes more effort. Nahi chahiye. All right, in this transaction, there is going to be a mixture of English and Hindi. Almost the entire transaction takes place in Hindi. And then again, as with last week, the interaction regarding money and numbers switches to English. So you'll hear 60 rupee and 70 rupee from the vendor, which is actually how he spoke it in the video as well. You will notice that there is a phrase in there, Kale dije, please give me the bananas. Dije is please or please give me. And then kale is bananas. It seems as though the sentence structure in Hindi is sort of opposite to that in English, where the direct object tends to be toward the front of the sentence or right at the front of the sentence. So, kale dije, bananas, please give me.
Are we starting?
This is my son Carter. He is 11 years old and we are both up early in the morning, so I recruited him to help me with this video.
I'm always up early in the morning, and I'm also almost taller than you.
Oh man, I know it. I'm going to keep doing this while I can.
We're from like this.
Then I'm going to have to do this. I don't know what I'm going to do.
All right.
I'll cross that bridge when it comes to it, buddy.
Ready?
Ready.
Action.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Aap kaise hain?
Acha.
ठीक है. Kale dije.
Kitna.
Ek kg. Kitne rupe hai?
This one is 70 rupees. This one is 60 rupees.
ठीक है. 60 rupees. Thank you.
I'm having a bad day.